jumping right in today because we're looking at something of a truly massive, literally world-altering scale, the 2026 global economic crisis. We're going to unpack exactly how a highly localized geopolitical conflict rapidly cascaded into this worldwide financial shockwave. We'll be tracking the data straight from the source material to really wrap our heads around the sheer magnitude of this event. It's basically like watching a giant puzzle fall apart. We're going to map out how one crucial domino fell and practically brought the entire global economy down with it.
Okay, let's dive into this with a really stark, urgent warning from the International Energy Agency. I mean, they did not mince words here. They called this the greatest global energy security challenge in history. And honestly, that isn't just hyperbole. It's a real reflection of how deeply interconnected and, frankly, how fragile our modern world actually is. When the IEA issues a statement like that, you know for sure we're dealing with a massive paradigm-shifting event.
So to make sense of this immense topic, here's our visual roadmap. 1. The Strait of Hormuz blockade. 2. The global energy shock. 3. Commodity chaos and broken supply. 4. The Gulf economic collapse. And finally, 5. A worldwide financial contagion. Let's get right into it.
Starting with Section 1, the Strait of Hormuz blockade.
So this blockade resulted in the sudden, total closing of one of the Earth's absolute most critical maritime routes. Just look at the sheer concentration of resources flowing through this one incredibly narrow geographic choke point. The Strait of Hormuz quietly functions as the beating heart of the world's energy supply. We're talking about a staggering 20% of the world's global oil, and 20% of its liquefied natural gas, or LNG, passing right through here. It's a vital artery, and suddenly, completely out of nowhere, that artery was just severed.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because the terrifying whiplash speed of this escalation is just incredible. In literally just 5 days, the whole world changed. On February 28th, the initial military strikes occur. By March 2nd, global markets are already dropping as the panic sets in. And just 2 days later, on March 4th, the Strait of Hormuz is officially closed, and Qatar declares force majeure on all its gas exports. 5 days. That's all it took to go from the first strike to the largest single supply disruption in the entire history of the global oil market.
Moving on to Section 2, the global energy shock.
As it became clear this blockade was actually going to hold, the immediate shock to the global system was massive. The oil production of Kuwait, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE collectively dropped by at least 10 million barrels a day. The result? Brent crude oil surged way past $120 a barrel. Bam! Just like that, the supply simply vanished overnight.
And it wasn't just oil either. Prepare for a quick back-to-back data punch here. Following the attacks on Qatar's massive Ras Laffan facilities, Asian LNG spot prices saw an astronomical 140% spike. Imagine being a country completely reliant on that gas for your power grids and heavy industry, and suddenly you're facing this unbelievable premium just to keep the lights on.
But let's pivot away from those abstract market numbers for a second and look at the human reality of this. The energy shock, combined with immediate airspace closures, completely paralyzed regional aviation. Major carriers, like Emirates and Qatar Airways, faced a near-total cessation of operations. Over 4,000 daily flight cancellations stranded hundreds of thousands of people globally. It was wild. Repatriation efforts were actually described as the biggest we've seen since World War II.
Section 3, commodity chaos and broken supply.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that the blockade didn't just stop oil and gas, it exposed these completely invisible global dependencies we didn't even know we had. I mean, you'd expect fuel shortages, sure, but notice these other raw materials up here: sulfur, urea, helium, and tungsten. The sudden absence of these exports from the Middle East sent immediate shockwaves through industries you just wouldn't naturally associate with a maritime blockade.
Take helium, for example. It's definitely not just for party balloons. It's an inert gas that is absolutely crucial for cooling silicon wafers during semiconductor manufacturing and for operating MRI machines in hospitals. Because a huge amount of the world's helium is actually produced as a byproduct of Qatari LNG, the energy halt suddenly and quite unexpectedly morphed into a massive medical and technological crisis.
This table spells out the chain reaction perfectly. So the lack of sulfur and urea caused severe fertilizer shortages, which directly threatened major agricultural exporters like Brazil, and by extension, global food yields. Helium prices literally tripled from $300 to $900, threatening to completely freeze global semiconductor manufacturing. And tungsten, which is totally essential for aerospace and defense, saw prices surge over 50%. So one single strait closes, and suddenly global tech,
global food, and aerospace all grind to a halt.
Section 4. The Gulf Economic Collapse.
While the rest of the world was definitely feeling the ripples, the regional fallout right at the epicenter was incredibly severe. Think about it. For decades, the pre-war narrative of the Gulf was that it was this permanently safe, glittering destination for expatriate talent, huge investments, and tourism. The post-war reality? A stark contrast. Analysts noted the region's image was irreversibly shaken, sparking a sudden, massive exodus of foreign talent and severe capital flight. The whole foundational economic model of the region was profoundly fractured.
But beyond the economics of it, there was a truly terrifying humanitarian threat unfolding. Just look at this reliance on desalination for basic drinking water. Qatar gets 99% of its potable water this way. Bahrain, 90%. When those military strikes hit the local power and desalination infrastructure, it wasn't just a matter of lost economic revenue. The basic, literal day-to-day survival of millions of people in cities like Doha and Dubai was suddenly put at extreme risk.
And this brilliantly illustrates the long-term socioeconomic shift we saw. Over 220,000 Indian nationals, many of them highly skilled professionals and established business owners, were rapidly repatriated. This trauma actually sparked a long-term reverse migration. These returnees packed up, took their capital back home with them, and completely bypassed the major metropolitan cities, noticeably boosting the Tier 2 and Tier 3 real estate markets over in India.
And finally, Section 5. A worldwide financial contagion.
Expanding our lens one last time, let's look at how these massive macro-level shockwaves finally hit the everyday consumer's wallet. So the crucial point is how this huge geopolitical event actually translates to daily life across the globe. In California, everyday drivers saw gasoline surge past $5 a gallon. Over in the UK, already strained households were facing inflation breaching 5%. And in the Philippines, which is a heavily import-dependent nation, the government was literally forced to declare a state of energy emergency and implement 4-day work weeks just to conserve basic power.
The disruptions just cascaded everywhere. Central banks, who were really hoping to lower interest rates, had to abruptly postpone those cuts because of the sudden new inflationary pressures. Heavy industry really suffered, with European chemical and steel plants facing 30% surcharges on electricity. Supermarkets like Asda in the UK had to actively warn their customers of physical fuel shortages at the pump. It even hit the sporting world. Get this. The famous Japanese racehorse Danon Dessel had to completely drop out of the Dubai World Cup due to the travel chaos. It's a small detail, but it shows how the global recession suddenly felt incredibly tangible in almost every facet of life.
All of which leaves us with a really massive, lingering question. After witnessing exactly how incredibly fast those dominoes fell, I mean from a single block straight to global semiconductor shortages and worldwide inflation in a matter of days, will the global economy ever fully trust single choke points for energy again? Or are we officially witnessing the end of the era of globalized energy as we know it? It's a fragile, deeply interconnected machine we've built, and a crisis of this magnitude really forces us to rethink absolutely everything about how it runs. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it brought some real clarity to what is an incredibly complex event. Keep